Good morning. Taxation is theft. This is kind of funny. This bus in front of me. Check this out. So I'm directly behind him, and you can see the side of it. I think his alignment is off. I could be wrong. Anyway, guys, that's not what I'm tuning in for. You might notice that I'm on a little bit earlier. No, later. No, I don't know. Down here, we don't celebrate daylight savings time. So while you have set your clocks back, I have not. However, at the same time, I am on my way to work, which is in Eastern time. So maybe I'm not that much off. But anyways, that's also not what I wanted to talk about. I started this little video here to talk about what's going on in my HOA. Yes, I'm part of an HOA. Yes, I'm not happy about it. But, it's a little condo I have down here. I mean, the places are literally built on top of each other, next to each other as one building. We share a pool. This isn't the type of situation where you can say, I'm not having an HOA. So, that aside, some interesting stuff going on there. So, the annual assembly meeting is coming up, and it's pretty small, right? It's only, I think there's 24 units. So, there's basically 24 people who get together to vote. Half of them don't show up because it's just a vacation rental. They don't care about the rules or anything. So more or less 12 people, probably less. And we have like a group message, chat message thing on WhatsApp where we talk, all the stuff that's going on, stuff throughout the year. Oh, a fence fell over. Oh, we're going to have to do this. Oh, we got to fix the pool. All these things. This is kind of like in our group discussion. And then we usually bring up some things there before we have our annual meeting. And so one of the things that happened, I guess I got to give the backstory on this, is we have a rule as it stands right now. Several rules, but one of them is absolutely no dogs unless they are... unless they belong to the owner of the apartment. No renters, no long-term renters, nobody can have dogs. Now, the thing is, over the past couple of years, whenever a renter comes in, the owners are usually like, look, I'm renting it to somebody, they're going to be there for a long time, so it's almost like they own the place. Can we make an exception? And the exception's usually made. Somebody else got clever and said, oh, well, this person isn't renting from me. She actually bought half of it from me, so she's 50-50 owner with me. And so we were like, okay, well, you're probably lying, but whatever. The rule slipped. And so now there are, I want to say, 2 or 3 different apartments that have dogs in them in violation of this rule. And pretty much everybody was okay with it and said, yeah, we're not going to enforce this rule. Now, one person showed up, and they were just sitting around with their door open. I was walking my dogs by, and they've got a great big, like, chocolate lab or something. And I've got, my dogs are like a little bit bigger than Chihuahuas. Don't laugh. I love my dogs. And we were walking by that door. Their dog heard us, came out to say hi and I guess play. And their dog put their mouth right on one of my dog's heads. And of course my dog's like yapping around like a fucking Chihuahua, going crazy. But she's on a leash. Theirs is not. And she ends up getting like a big hole in her throat and on the top of her head. And the owners come out. They call the dog in. That's the worst of it. We take the dog to the vet. It's just a little hole. She gets some antibiotics. No big deal. But in the HOA meeting, this is now bringing up some issues. We have to enforce the dog rule. We have to enforce the dog rule. Now, I'm the supposed victim here, and I'm even saying, like, yeah, that rule's kind of bullshit. There's an Einstein quote that I brought up. I can't recite it perfectly right now, but it's something to the effect of when the rules, or when he's talking about laws, when the laws become so numerous and so ridiculous that people don't want to follow them, then they start losing all respect for the law. Not just those laws, but the other laws as well. And we see this with drug prohibition, right? Everybody says fuck the police because drug prohibition is stupid. And they see police enforcing this all the time. So now, like, speed limits and traffic signs and everything else, now they're even like, yeah, well, fuck those too. And then when they're like saying, oh, you gotta have like regulations and you know, stuff over here, yeah, well, fuck those too. Who the hell are you? They lose all respect for all of the rules because you crossed the line with a few of them. Where, you know, and maybe all these regulations and other rules are not legitimate to begin with, but you didn't have a revolution on your hands. You didn't have people you had people who were mostly willing to comply because they were like, oh yeah, speed limit, okay, that sounds like a good idea, we'll save some lives. And then you brought in drug prohibition, and they were like, no, fuck that, fuck you and all your rules. So what they're attempting to do with this HOA is absolutely ridiculous. It is to keep this rule and to find out a better way to enforce it. How are they going to enforce it? Well, they can issue fines, which they're supposed to already do, but nobody really issues the fines for these. They have issued some fines on loud parties, people having loud parties. There's a rule that says you're not supposed to have parties past like 9 or 10, and some people have parties anyway, or they rent to people who have parties and they don't tell them the rules. And so because you don't tell your tenants the rules, then you gotta pay a fine, which makes people say like, oh shit, next time I rent this place out, I better tell them the rules, right? Now, not that I'm all in favor of like fines and everything, but yeah, I mean, let's at least say that, you know, if I'm expecting to live in a pretty quiet neighborhood and I've got someone, you know, pounding speakers on my wall while I'm trying to sleep, then that's kind of a violation of my space, which is just something that happens when you have this many living spaces so close to each other. Anyways, that's kind of, well, yeah, it's still kind of part of the point. But so now I recommended, well, okay, what's the purpose of this rule? What if we change this rule to make this better? Because obviously nobody takes this rule seriously. Every one of us have broken it by deciding either to ask for an exception, or to vote to approve the exception, or to decide not to enforce it. Every single one of us have broken this rule. So why don't we change the rule to something that makes sense? And of course, the tyrants who are just sticklers for the rules, regardless of what the rules are, well, the rules are the rules, they don't want to change the rules. They don't want to change the rules to have them make more sense. They just want to enforce the rules. Now, if the rules were changed, I'm absolutely sure they'd be happy to enforce them as they were changed, because that's just the bureaucratic mindset that they have. But it's interesting that same mindset is also turning them into resistance for any change to those rules. Why is that? What sense does that make? And so I asked the question, what is this rule trying to prevent? Are we worried that there are going to be too many dogs? Are we worried that there are going to be too much barking? Are we worried that there's going to be dogs pooping all over the place? Are we worried that there's going to be dogs off leashes attacking small children? What are we worried about? Because if it's a few of those last ones, pooping all over the place, dogs off leashes, make a rule about dogs on leashes and poop. Make a fee if somebody doesn't do it, because I can guarantee you, nobody is going to vote for an exception. Well, that guy crapped on his dog crapped in the plants and he didn't clean it up. Let's vote for an exception so he doesn't get a fine. Nobody's going to vote for that. And it doesn't matter if that person is an owner or a renter. Right? So, what do you need this rule about renters can't have dogs? Because we haven't really had a problem. Now, this is interesting too, because the dog that bit my dog claims to be a nephew of the owner. Now, according to the rules, that doesn't matter. The rules say it has to be the owner's dog. Well, that's pretty stupid, because what if the owners have kids and the kids have a dog? That would be in violation of the rules too. So again, the rule is written in a very stupid way and needs to change. Even if it's just to say, okay, owners and family members instead. So many things wrong with this, but and I could probably talk all day about, how we could address the issue, but I think these are the two most important things that I've found while dealing with this. Is the first, what I said about the tyrant who wants to, and he created half of these rules, so I'm sure there's some bias there too, but he wants the rules to be rules. And this guy's got 2 dogs of his own. This guy violates some of the rules himself. There's a rule that says you're not allowed to hang towels over the balconies because it makes the place look ugly. Well, there's no rule against anything else over the balcony, just towels. So he gets to put Christmas lights on his. A little bit of hypocrisy there. But it's interesting that the people who are mostly the ones to enforce the rules, even if they've taken it upon themselves to enforce the rules, are the same people who want to protect the rules. And we see that all the time with police where, oh, well, I don't make the rules, I just enforce them. Right? It's the same kind of thing. Why don't you vote to change it? You don't hear, and yes, I have heard police say, yeah, we should end the war on drugs, but you don't hear a whole lot of them saying that, especially when they're arresting you for possession. Right? The other interesting thing is that nobody wants to talk about the purpose of the rules. What is the purpose of the rules? Because if you don't know the purpose of the rules, you can't suggest alternatives. I mean, you could suggest, well, let's just get rid of it. What are you worried about? What are you worried about? And if nobody has an answer to that, if their only answer is, well, we're just worried about generic chaos from all of these dogs, that's not okay. So fine, put a cap. Say, okay, no more than 8 dogs at a time, ever. Okay, doesn't matter if they're renters or owners. No more than 8 dogs ever. That would actually make more sense than no renters, because there's probably never more than 8 dogs there anyway. It's not that big of a deal. Anyway, guys, just some thoughts for the day. I'm pulling into my little office here. Gonna get to work. Got some awesome things coming up with Taxation is Theft. Really awesome stuff you're gonna want to see. But it's a secret for now. I do have a new piece of software I'm working on to combat Facebook's ultra bans. And you'll be hearing more about that soon. And of course, I should remind you, head on over to taxationistheft.info and go get one of these hats or a t-shirt or something. Help me out. Help me keep doing all the shit that I'm doing. Because believe you me, once we get to the point where I can focus all of my time and energy on this shit and get out of my fucking day job, oh, you're gonna see some crazy shit. You're already gonna see some crazy shit in the next few months, but I'm not gonna say any more than that. Alright guys, Taxation is Theft. Catch you later.